Turn to your neighbor and say, I'm glad you're here today. Turn to your other neighbor and say, you're so fine. Some of you are like, that caught me off guard. Man, attitude is so important. I want to also mention that today we're going to be ordaining 3 young men that have completed our school of ministry over the last 2 years. And they have really given it their all, and great young men, and we're believing God to really bless their ordination as well. You know, this having the right attitude for Paul is not just about perspective, it's about reality. He's showing us here that even when things aren't the best, having a wrong attitude doesn't change it. But having the right attitude, while it may not change your outward circumstance, will change you for the better. And it will change outcomes for the better in total. You know, the breakdown of this passage of scripture here is basically what Paul said. Paul said, I'm pressured, but I'm not crushed. I'm unsure, but I'm not despairing. I'm hunted down and persecuted, but I'm not deserted. I'm struck down, but not destroyed. You know, graduates here today and everybody in this room, you're going to have opportunities truly to feel crushed in life. I'm sure that some of you have felt crushed in life. Some of you have felt crushed this week. Some of you have felt downtrodden or discouraged or frustrated about different things. But always remember, you may be pressured, but you are not crushed. You may be unsure about what's going to happen, but you don't have to be despairing. You may feel like the enemy is hunting you down and persecuting you, but you will not be deserted because Jesus said, I'll never leave you or forsake you, even to the end of the age. And sometimes life can strike us down. We talked last week about failure. We talked about how failure doesn't have to be our enemy. It can be our friend if we use failure for the education to move to the next level God has for us. And the truth is here, we will be struck down at different times in life. I hate to tell that to you. That's not very exciting. That's not very inspiring, but it's true. And I would hate to be a person, a pastor, a leader in your life that won't tell you that there's going to come some problems. And I feel and fear that we as a generation of parents are failing on this mark because we are trying to keep our kids from having to feel any of the consequences of anything. So we don't allow them to lose anything. We don't allow them to have a bad day. We don't allow them to deal with the consequences of wrong actions. We always try to swoop in and keep them from dealing with trouble. But the problem is if you don't teach them how to deal with trouble now, they're not going to know how to deal with it later. And let me tell you, it's coming. And some of them feel in their mind that everything's just going to be great, rosy, peachy keen for them in their life because we have made sure that there's a cushion for them to fall on every single time something goes wrong in their life. That was a little convicting, wasn't it, parents? You're like, that's not me. Don't talk to me about that. It is our generation, though. It is our society. And I hope that that's not you as a parent. Well, isn't our job as parents to keep them from going through hard, difficult circumstances? Isn't our job as parents to keep them from having to deal with the difficulties we deal with? No, our job as parents is to keep them out, give them wisdom, give them direction and purpose. But we can never protect everything in their life. We can never cover everything in their life. The moment they leave you, you're out of control of protecting them. We've got to trust God. We've got to rely on God. And we have to let them experience life. Because if we don't, they will not be prepared for it when the real thing comes. Right now, they're in a covering. Your home, your house. Are y'all with me today? You're like, so far, I don't know where attitude comes into this. Attitude is important in the way we do everything. Turn to your neighbor and say, it's important. It's important in the way we parent. It's important in the way we live. And Paul here was telling us, having the right attitude may not immediately change your circumstances, but it'll change the way you treat those circumstances. And it'll change the way you feel and the perspective you have about those circumstances. So let me tell you young people something right now. Let me just give you some encouragement so you can understand that when troubles come and difficulties come and issues happen in your life, you know this. God has got your back if you'll lean and trust on him. And difficulties will come, but they won't be forever. I was listening to a song on the way here that said, Ain't no need to worry. It's a gospel song, so pardon my vernacular. Ain't no need to worry. What came tonight will be gone in the morning. So don't worry that when trouble comes, it's going to overwhelm your life or overtake your life. And understand that good things are coming to you. Keep your attitude straight, because having a bad attitude in the midst of hard circumstances will not change those hard circumstances, but they will elevate you in the midst of those hard circumstances. The way we see life matters. How many of you believe that? The way we view life matters. It matters in the way we respond to things. It matters in the way that things happen to us. It affects our thoughts. It affects our feelings. It affects our actions, the way we view life. You know, sometimes we view life in weird ways. And sometimes, even when we're walking with God, things don't turn out like we thought they would. I was reading something this week that I thought was so funny. It was a man, he said, I really want to talk to God. I really want to understand some things about God. So he went and climbed on top of a high mountain. And he said, I'm going to go up to this high mountain. I'm going to get alone and I'm going to ask God some questions. So he gets up on top of this high mountain and he starts talking to God. And he asks God, he says, God, how much time is 1,000 years to you, or 1,000,000 years to you? God, what is 1,000,000 years to you? And God said, oh, it's about a minute. And the man said, well, God, what's $1 million to you? He said, it's about a penny. So the man said, God, can I have a penny? And he said, in a minute. Yeah, some of y'all get that in a minute. Sometimes life doesn't turn out like we want it to. Sometimes we have difficulties, we have circumstances, we have issues that even we deal with when it comes to our relationship with God, because we have certain ideas and parameters of what we think our life should be like and how it should work and what should go on. And the truth is, attitude has a lot to do with the way we achieve and accomplish in life, because things don't always turn out the way we want. But let me just tell you something, that shouldn't stop us, because whatever the dream is in your heart, it can be done. Whatever the dream is that God's put in your heart, the passion that he's put in your heart, the desire that he's put in your heart, it can be done if you will apply yourself and if you'll follow him and if you'll keep your attitude right. Attitude's very important to our success, and it's important to the tone of our life. Now, attitude isn't everything. Turn to your neighbor and say, attitude isn't everything. Because we're teaching our kids also that if you just have a good attitude, you can do anything. And there's nothing you can't do. But can I just tell you, graduates, something? There are things you can't do. It is crazy how we throw these epithets out there, or epitaphs out there. We just say things that are just little colloquialisms that we think everybody should follow, and everybody and we put this unrealistic dynamic and understanding in our kids' lives. You can't do everything. There's not everything you can do. If you just believe, there's nothing you can't do. That is totally bogus. Because no matter how hard I try, I'm not going to play in the NBA. How many of y'all would you agree with that right now? It doesn't matter if I believe it with everything on the inside of me, and I've been believing it since I was a child, and I got skills, and I try really hard, and I'm just going to do everything I can do to make it, and I believe, and because I believe, I'm going to play in the NBA. I'm not going to play in the NBA, because number one, you got to have some talent. And it's not just a little bit of talent. I used to think I was a good basketball player. I really did. Stop laughing. I'm joking. I used to think I was a really good basketball player till I played with a guy who sat on the bench at Oklahoma University. He never even played. He got a scholarship to go there. He never even come off the bench. But I played with him in a pickup game, and I thought to myself, my Lord, that's what it's like to really be good at basketball. I couldn't believe how good he was at basketball. I was like, people are that good at basketball? Listen, it doesn't matter how much I believe. I'm not playing in the NBA. I'm not. So it's false for us to say, hey, if you just have a good attitude and if you just believe whatever it is, you can do it, you can achieve it. But attitude isn't everything and belief isn't everything, because you still need to be competent. Everybody say competent. Attitude is very important to our success, and it affects the tone of our life, but it doesn't cover up for incompetence, and it can't take the place of skill or ability or even hard work, but it does set the tone for our life, and it will determine how effective those areas of our lives will be, or if they'll be effective at all. Because I know a lot of people that are very talented, but their attitude is keeping them from progress in their life. I know a lot of people that have a lot of talent, but they don't have faith in themselves or in the process or in God or anything. They just don't have it. And because they don't have faith or belief, and because they don't have attitude, those things by themselves don't make you achieve what you want to achieve. But you got to have those to really set the tone for who you want to be in life. See, attitude breaks the tie. All things being equal, if two people go in and they're going to both try to succeed and they both have the same talents, they both have the same skill set, they both have the same abilities, they both have the same drive, it will be attitude that makes the difference. Attitude will make the difference. The person who has the good attitude normally, most of the time, will succeed, where the person who has a bad attitude won't, because your attitude can stop you. You say, well, how is attitude spiritual? How does attitude affect our life? Because it's the way we see things, it's perspective, and it does affect our lives. Because God wants us to have a faith-filled attitude and mindset. Attitude can set you up for wins in life. How many of y'all love to win? How many of you love to win? How many of you hate to lose? Come on, raise your hand. How many of you hate to lose more than you love to win? This is why I'm not even watching the NBA playoffs right now. I don't care who wins. I don't care. As a matter of fact, I hate them all. I'm joking. I don't hate them all. But who cares? I'm out. My team is out. And I hate the fact that we lost. So why should I celebrate for someone else? My attitude's great, huh? Attitude can set you up for wins in life, or it can break you down for losses. We don't like to lose. We can learn from losing, but if our attitude is bad, we'll lose more than we'll win. And we won't learn from the loses or the losses and the things that happen in our life. I don't know if you've ever heard the story of Roger Bannister in the 4-Minute Mile, but Roger Bannister was the first person. He was an Englishman, and he ended up being a medical doctor, but he was the first person to ever break the 4-minute mile. And he had trained for it for a long time. People literally thought it couldn't be done because there are a lot of things that happened that had caused kind of public athletic events and things like that to go on hold for about 9 years because of some war and things of that nature. But the reality was no one had come close to breaking the 4-minute mile. But he believed he could do it. And his attitude was, we're just going to train and we're going to develop and we're going to persevere till we get it done. And when everybody said, I just don't know if you can do it, I don't know if it can be done, he just continued to press, he just continued to push. His attitude of perseverance, his attitude of not giving up, his attitude for caring more about winning that goal than what people thought, his attitude pushed him forward, and it set the tone for his ability, it set the tone for his skill, it set the tone for his goal, it set the tone for the way he would approach that goal. And when he approached that goal, he achieved it and he accomplished it. They didn't even know what the real actual score was, because when the announcer came out and said Roger Bannister has now finished at a 3, when he said the word 3, the cheers were so loud no one ever knew. It was like 3 minutes 58 seconds. I mean, it was that close to the 4-minute mile. Now here's the powerful thing about attitude. When he broke that, it had never been broken before. In 24 days, it was broken again by someone else. And not long after that, over 74 people broke that mark. And now you're not even a valid runner if you can't break that mark. I mean, we would all be valid to us. But on that level, now it's a norm. Why is that a norm? Why was it? It was because of his skill. It was because of his ability. It was because of his training. It was because of his talent. It was because of the way he ran and the way he trained. But the truth is, his attitude set the tone for whether or not he would keep trying. His attitude set the tone for whether or not he would give up when things got hard. He almost gave up that day because the wind was blowing 25 miles an hour. And he thought there's no way, there's going to be too much resistance. And they luckily caught a break, but they decided we're going to go for it anyway. And they went for it, and the wind stopped, and he was able to break the record. Listen, our attitude sets the tone. I love what Joyce Meyer said. She said, a positive attitude gives you a power over your circumstances instead of your circumstances having power over you. This is where it becomes spiritual, because it's so tiring to me as a pastor when we let our people who know God and know his ability and know his power, how we will let that circumstances around our life stop us or hold us back or keep us from moving forward or control us. Our circumstances are not supposed to be affecting us in that way. We are supposed to be standing on top of that, because our attitude is this: I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I am made more than a conqueror through Jesus Christ who died for me. I am an overcomer by the blood of the Lamb and the word of my testimony. I rejoice in all things and at all times, no matter what. The Bible tells us that that is the important thing in our life, that our attitude stays up, that our attitude believes, our attitude says, I will persevere. Our attitude sets the tone and it sets the pace. But we've had this problem for a long time. Cain and Abel. Y'all know about Cain and Abel, right? The Bible says in Hebrews chapter 11, verse 4, by faith, Abel offered to God a more acceptable sacrifice than Cain, through which it was testified of him that he was righteous, upright, and right standing with God. And God testified by accepting his gifts. And though he died, yet through this act of faith, he still speaks. This was an attitude issue. And you might say, well, no, this wasn't about attitude. This was about murder. But it really wasn't. It was about attitude. Turn to your neighbor and say, attitude. You need a good attitude. You need to have the right attitude. And from the beginning, Cain did not have the right attitude. Abel had a good attitude. What was his attitude? He was generous. He was kind. He was devoted. He was positive. He was generous, kind, devoted, and positive. This was his attitude. What was Cain's attitude? It was bad. He was stingy. He was jealous. He was angry. He was negative. This is the kind of person he was. And when pressure came to his attitude, Cain responded in the only way somebody with that attitude would respond: by taking, by being abusive, by hurting, by murder, by taking out the competition, by being insecure and trying to stand over the top of someone else instead of just growing and developing himself. Attitude sets the tone for your behavior, and your behavior will set the pace for your life. Listen to me. Let your attitude be great, because it will set the tone for your behavior, and your behavior will establish what happens in your life. I don't care what anybody says to you in this generation. Listen to me. Your behavior counts. The way you see life counts. The way you do things count. It matters. Turn to your neighbor and say, it matters. From the beginning, we've had two choices. One of those choices, or we've had many choices, and one of those choices has been, we will decide which attitude we'll have. Attitude doesn't happen to us. We happen to it. It's funny to me how so many people act as if this is just my attitude. This is just the way I am. Turn to your neighbor and say, stop saying that. So much of the time we say, this is just the way I am. Well, do you want to be that way? Isn't it interesting when people say, this is just the way I am? It's always negative. You're just going to have to accept it because this is the way I am. Well, stop being the way you are. I mean, did you ever want to say that to somebody? Like we have no control over being the way we are. This is just who I am, and I can't be anybody else, and this is the way it is. Listen to me. You have a choice what your attitude will be. When you get up in the morning, you have a choice. You going to be rotten or you going to be good? You have a choice. Are you going to look at this day? Some people, it's so funny to me out here because some people, it never rains enough, and in some people, it's raining too much. I want exact amount of rain, but no hell involved. I want rain, but no lightning. I want rain, but no thunder. Come on, somebody. It's so funny how we will allow our circumstances and our situations to affect our attitude when we have a choice whether that attitude will be. If you have a good attitude, how many of you have ever been around somebody just got a good attitude? You just like them. You just get around them. They're so positive. Some people are so positive it makes you a little gaggy. You know what I'm saying? It makes you like, you're too positive. You know why you feel that way? Because you're not positive. Somebody told me one time they didn't like Joel Osteen because he was too positive. This was a Christian. He's just too positive. How can you be too positive as a Christian? Maybe you're too negative. That's what I said to him. I said, maybe you're too negative. I mean, good night. He is really positive, though. I heard a story about him not long ago where one guy had gone to a conference, and he had said that they were talking about how to work on your communication skills, and you should listen to yourself and you should watch yourself. And this one leader said, you should watch yourself, and you'll either do one or two things. You'll get better or you'll quit. And so they asked Joel Osteen the same thing, and he said, well, I agree with him exactly. You watch yourself. It really makes it visible to you. You see what needs to change. He said, you'll either get better, well, you just get better. That's what he said. He couldn't even bring himself to say, you'll quit. He just couldn't do it. It's so good to be positive. Why? Because it takes your life in a better direction. It will move your life in a better trajectory. We have so much cynicism in our culture today, and they're trying to put it on our young generations. Don't be cynical. Don't be doubtful. Don't be that person who's always against everything. Come on. Don't be the person who wears negativity like a medal of honor. It's hemming you in and you don't even realize it. I know people who wear negativity like you could buy them a pin and put it on their lapel and they'd appreciate it. I'm negative, get over it. I mean, they would wear that. Like I'm always the no person and I'm always the person who's against everything. And if nobody else will stand up, I'm going to stand up. Well, people want you to sit down. Come on. Negativity is not the way of God. It's not the way God does things or God sees things. God is good and he operates in that way. Choose a good attitude and watch as things take on a different tone in your life. You are a thermometer you are a thermostat, not a thermometer. You all know what a thermostat does. A thermostat tells what the temperature is, but then sets the tone for the temperature. In other words, if my house is 75 degrees and it's in the summer and it's hot and I want it to cool down, my thermostat will look at that and say, this is 75, but David wants to be 68. And Janae wants it to be 71. No, I'm joking. And do y'all have this same fight at your house? Dave wants to be 68, and so I'm going to adjust the temperature in this house for 68. And Janae can get a blanket. But the truth is, listen, that's what you are. Yes, you can tell what the temperature is, but you have the choice of whether or not you're going to let the temperature stay the way it is. You have the ability to set the temperature for your life. You hear me? You have the ability to set the temperature for your life. Nobody else. No, your mom and dad can't do it. Your friends can't do it. If you allow them to do it, they will do it. But if you want your life to be what it should be, you need to understand you set the temp. You set the atmosphere. And you do it with your attitude. Every adversity can't keep you down if you choose to have a great attitude. You choose to set the tone for your life. I was going to show you a video today, but I'm not going to do it just because I feel like it wouldn't hit. It didn't have what I needed to have, but because there were subtitles and it was all in Spanish. For those of you who speak Spanish, you would have thought it was great, but for the rest of us, we would have been like, I don't know what's going on. And but the subtitles were too small, so I didn't show it, but I want to tell you about it. It's about a little orchestra called the Recycle Orchestra from Catura, Paraguay. And what this orchestra is, they travel all over now and they play. And you would be amazed. You should go look them up on YouTube. You'd be amazed at what they can do. But here's what happened. A guy went in, and this is a whole community of kids that live in Paraguay next to the dump. They live next to the garbage heap. Okay? And this happens a lot in the developing world. But this man went in and he decided, I'm going to do something about this. He wasn't even a master musician. He just was a person who wanted to see things change. And so he went in and he found a guy who could go take things out of that dump and make instruments out of them. So they literally make violins. They make the big whatever. I don't know all the technology, but the technical terms. But he made all these instruments, flutes, trumpets, all kinds of different instruments, literally from trash out of the garbage. And then those kids come in and they teach them musicianship and they teach them how to play. And now that they have taken literal garbage, and through the hands of one person who has created these instruments, and through the hands of these children who had a different attitude, and they begin to learn, they've made beautiful music out of garbage. And my question to you today and to myself is, what garbage in our lives is affecting us and impacting us that we could turn it on its head and make beautiful music from it? Listen, your attitude can cause you to overcome the limitations in your life, overcome the barriers in your life, overcome the hard, difficult things that you struggle with. Your attitude can help you set the tone to overcome it. I heard a guy say the other day, and I really thought it was funny, because sometimes we just take life too seriously. How many of you take life too seriously? Those of you who are taking your hand, not raising your hand, you are taking yourself too seriously right now. I'm not raising my hand because I'm too serious to do that. Listen to me. We all, because I know how we live in the Western world. We're always worried. We're always anxious. We're always stressed out. Why? Because we take life too seriously. I love this guy said. He said, listen, you should learn to laugh at yourself. And if you can't laugh at yourself, call me. I'll laugh at you. And I really feel like we need friends in our life. Friends in our lives that will help us not to take ourselves so seriously. Friends in our life that'll laugh at us if we need to laugh at. Friends in our lives that will encourage us when we need encouraged. We need someone in our life that'll say, when your attitude is getting sour, I'll back you up with my positive attitude. A negative thinker sees a difficulty in every opportunity, but a positive thinker sees an opportunity in every difficulty. This goes all the way back to the Bible. Look at Moses when he was trying to go into the promised land. God had said, go set my people free. He went to set his people free. And when he set them free, he took them through the wilderness, and they were supposed to have an 11-day journey into the promised land. And he sent 12 spies in. And when he sent 12 spies in, they saw what God had promised. 12 of them, they all saw what God had promised. And not only had they seen what God promised, they saw what God could do. Remember, they walked across dry ground in the middle of the Red Sea. They saw God do miraculous things, bring water out of a rock. What couldn't God do? They just saw the 12 plagues against Egypt, who were holding them captive as slaves. What couldn't God do? Yet when they came to the edge of that promised land and they sent 12 spies in, what happened was those 12 spies went in, they came back, and they weren't, 12 of them or 10 of them were saying the walls are too high, the armies are too big. Yes, it is a land flowing with milk and honey. Yes, it is this great place that God has promised us, but it's too big of a challenge. And they said something very important. They said that to them we look like grasshoppers, and to us we look like grasshoppers. You see, there's something about attitude, and that is this. You can have faith in God and believe God can do anything. But if you see yourself as small and insignificant, you'll never achieve it, no matter how big God is to you. Because that's what kept them out of the promise. He had 2 spies that came back, though, Joshua and Caleb. And those 2 spies came back, and they said, we can do this. We are well able. Let's take it right now. Their attitude was, God's promised it to it. God's given us to us. And listen, young people, what has God promised you? How has your family raised you? What have they raised you to believe? And what has God promised you? Listen, God will do what he says he will do if you'll trust him and rely on him and have the attitude that says, this is my promise. God has given this to me, and I will not stop until I've achieved it. And no matter how hard it looks, no matter how difficult it looks, I'm going to go for what God told me to go for, because I know he'll come through if I do what I'm supposed to do. Amen? 2 of them saw possibilities. 10 saw problems. The 2 saw the potential. The 10 saw the predicament. The 2 saw the opportunity, but the 10 saw the obstacle. When Joshua finally took over and Moses died and they were about to go into the promise, when this happened, do you know what Joshua did? He sent 2 spies. Go read it. He didn't send 12 to represent all the 12 tribes of Israel like Moses did. He just sent 2. And he gave them very specific instructions. They came back with a good report and they ended up taking the promise. Come on. Attitude makes a difference. The negative attitude of the 10 kept them bound to the wilderness for 40 more years. How long are you going to sit here? How long are you going to go without your promise? How long are you going to not get what God has promised you? How long? 40 more years? No, accomplishment for 40 years because their bad attitude influenced what they believed. It didn't matter to them. So we can see why you should have a good attitude. Number 1, it leads to success and significance. Number 2, it creates opportunity for yourself and others. And number 3, it helps us overcome adversity. And number 4, it's just a happier way to live. Tell your neighbor and smile at him. Now, doesn't that feel better than a little nasty frown? Come on. Turn to your neighbor right now and say, you're good looking. Even if you say it by faith, come on. You're good looking. Now, doesn't that feel better than you got something on your face? Come on. Turn to your neighbor and say, you can do it. Now, doesn't that sound better than you can't, there's no way, I don't know how you ever accomplish it? Just in that little exercise, one lifts while the other just devastates. Attitude's important. So the bigger question then is how. And graduates, if you're taking notes, here's what I would want you to write down. How? Number 1, decide to have a good attitude no matter what. No matter what the circumstances are, no matter what the atmosphere is, no matter what problems there are, decide to have a good attitude no matter what. Everybody say that with me. No matter what. Everybody again, no matter what. Chuck Swindoll said this. He said, I'm convinced that life is 10% of what happens to me and 90% how I respond to it. So it is with you. We are in charge of our own attitudes. The second thing is have high expectations. Listen, stop listening to people who have low expectations for you. Stop listening to people who do not expect big things from you. And expect big things from yourself. Set the standard high. Don't set the bar low. Don't set small. I mean, have some goals. I was watching a little interview with I think he was maybe a defensive player, or I don't know who it was, from Baylor University in football. Great kid, and he came right out of the projects, and he was talking about, he said this. He said, I may live in the projects, but the projects don't live in me. And he said, I have a dream that's so big. Now listen to this. I have a dream that's so big, God has to get involved for it to happen. And you know, he had injuries that kept him from playing like he wanted to play in football. But do you know what? He's a Rhodes Scholar now. And he's in Harvard University. Listen to me. Set your attitude. It'll set the tone for your life. There was a double-blind study, and I'm closing with this. There was a double-blind study that was done by Nell Monets. I can't read the name. But here's what they said. They took 3 people, teachers, professors, and they said, you are 3 of the best that we have. You're 3 of the best professors that there are. And we're going to give you, over this next year, 90 overachieving students. And what we're going to do is we're going to let you work them at their pace. And so these teachers got so excited, and they went into the classroom and they began to just get ready for these students. And they set the expectations, and they got it all ready, and they started teaching these kids. And over the year, what happened is these kids achieved 20 to 30% more than all the students in the area. And then they came back to them and they said, oh, we're so excited about the results. And the teacher was like, yes, these students are amazing. And they said, well, let me give you a little bit of information. And here's the information, the double-blind study. You are not the best teachers. We drew you out of a hat. And these kids are not the exceptional kids. They're average. But because they put them in an atmosphere where there were high expectations, and because they loved on these kids, and because they wanted to see great things out of them, and because they believed they were the highest level kid, they gave them a greater input. And because they believed they were the best teachers, they wanted to make a good showing. And as a result of all these high expectations, these kids, 90 kids, did 20 to 30% higher than every kid in the area. That is the power of attitude. That is the power of expectation. Don't listen to people who say you can't do it, or it can't be done, or it'll never happen, or your dreams aren't possible. Don't listen to people who believe things small for you or are small-minded. We're surrounded by people who are small-minded. And we don't need to be small-minded people, because God has big purpose for you. Walt Emerson said, what lies behind us and what lies before us are tiny matters compared to what lies within us. And the third and last thing is this: take responsibility for your attitude. It's nobody else's responsibility. Viktor Frankl, who is a German or a Jewish psychologist, also was a survivor of the Holocaust, said this as they were tormenting him and torturing him at one of the Holocaust death camps. The one thing you cannot take away from me, he said, is the way I choose to respond to what you do to me. The last of one's freedoms is to control one's attitude in any given circumstance. So if you truly want to be free, don't think that your circumstances can hold you back. And don't allow people's low expectations to hold you back. But set your attitude. You're the thermostat. You set your attitude. Know what the temperature is. Know where you are, but know where it is you want to go. And then daily and consistently start walking those steps to get to that end result. God's got big things for you, young people. God's got big things for you. Just set your attitude straight and set your faith on Him. And no matter what comes against you, the tone of your life will be up and not down. And you will make it. And I say that to you, not just because a good way to end a talk. I say that to you out of a prophetic utterance. I'm saying to you now, I declare over you, no matter what your circumstances have been, no matter the problems you faced, no matter the issues you've gone through or will go through, you will fulfill the purpose and destiny that God has for your life.